How scary is your practice? Welcome to the KC CHIROpulse Podcast. I'm Dr. Michael Perush, and this is my good friend and co-host, Dr. Troy Fox. Troy, how scary can practice be?
Very scary.
Very scary.
That was my comedic interruption there in the middle. I got your attention though. So
you did. It's Halloween week, and you startled me.
We've got a list of things that can be very scary in your practice, and quite frankly, a well-run practice still has to be aware of these items. But if you've got your head buried in the sand, and we're coming into Halloween week, and we start talking about this short list that we have, these fears, sometimes they're overwhelming in practice. And we see docs all the time that unfortunately do stick their heads in the sand and say, if I can't see it, it didn't happen, and I'm okay. But the truth and reality is that there are best practices. There are ways that we have to function. And so I don't want to steal your thunder. I'm not going to use any of the key words. I'm going to let you start into the list, but practice can be a scary thing.
Well, it can be. And when I started thinking about this, here we are coming into Halloween, and so Halloween's one of my favorite times of the year. I just love the whole macabre aspect of Halloween. So I just started thinking on that level of, what's frightening in practice.
Right.
And it's a lot of what we wind up advising practices on is the scary things. Not always, not everything is scary. There's some great things. But for example, I'll just dive in. The fear of audits. Ooh, everybody out there, is that a scary thought? You get that letter and it says, we want to see records on John Smith. No, I didn't just break HIPAA. There's no fictitious person, but so how do we manage that fear? How do we manage the fear of audits?
Yeah, because the first thing that goes through your head when you get that is, were my notes good enough?
Right.
Did I actually get everything in there, or did I accidentally hit sign without fulfilling all of my obligations?
Do I even know what I'm supposed to have in my notes?
Well, that's another one. Or is my note format or my template even correct? Does it cover all the bases that I have to cover? And we see, unfortunately, sometimes people that omit things, and we see people that didn't even know that they had to have this in their notes.
Yep.
And they said, well, this is just a wellness patient that's, we hear it all, but there is a minimum record keeping requirement, and your state has that outlined usually in their guidelines. So you should be able to look that up. But that's number one, and that is a scary one.
It is. And Medicare has guidelines as well. Do you know what those are? And
Yes.
do you know what triggers an audit? Now, in defense of everybody here, there are just random audits. The insurance companies do just random audits. Your name came up on the lottery and boom, we're going to look at a record.
You win.
Right. But you've got it. They win sometimes. You've got to be prepared by just understanding the rules of red flags. What are you doing that may be triggering an audit? And how would an insurance company know? They don't look at your records all the time. Well, they kind of do, because every time you submit billing, you're submitting a start date for that care. You're submitting the treatment that you did, your CPT codes, and you're submitting your ICD-10 codes. Okay. Those three things right there need to tell a congruent story. And when the congruency is off, and it's usually off either with the CPT code you're using or how long you've been treating the patient, i.e. the number of visits they've had, that's a lot of times what throws up the red flag. So it's important. Do you know what your documentation is supposed to include? We just kind of talked about that one. But do you know what your notes actually say? You might know all this stuff. Yeah. But when was the last time you actually printed a note out and read it, went through it?
And the funny thing was, when I set up my new note-taking system, I printed out a note because I wanted to see what it looked like. And I was a little bit astonished at how poor it looked. And so I went back through and did some editing. And the good news was I did it on a practice patient. I just went through and so I kind of already knew that I needed to look at that in advance. So I did it on a practice patient, printed it out. And, the good news was my astonishment or my complete fear, kind of like Halloween, like walking up to somebody's house and somebody jumping out of the bushes, at least was a test run. And so I looked at the note and I went, oh my gosh, that looks horrible. This looks horrible. That looks horrible. And I took some quick notes. I went back in and edited it. And then I created a note again and printed it out again. So you can very easily use like a test patient
Absolutely.
to go in and do like a complete note. Somebody comes in and they're worse than they were last time. These orthopedics were positive, or these muscle tests were positive. Whatever you want to do on that note, fill it out completely and do a lot of detail on it, and then see what it looks like. And then also do a very minimal note, because we do have those folks that are just coming in for, what I call a tune-up. Hey, I feel great, doc. Everything's wonderful. I'm here for a tune-up. So we want to know what that note looks like as well. Does it look like a barren desert, or does it actually have at least the minimum record keeping requirements that we need?
Mm-hmm. Or did it dump a whole bunch of other stuff into it that makes it now not a maintenance patient? I've seen that too.
Yes.
So you really got to pay attention to your notes. So I'm just curious, the side note, kind of a fun thought. Since we're talking about Halloween and costumes, it just made me think of this. Who is your practice new patient? What's the practice patient's name?
My practice. Oh, it's Bridget Fox.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So because it's my wife, I put her name in there as the practice patient when I was first messing with it. But yeah, I should have come up with something super cool.
Yeah. Mine was Barney and Betty Rubble.
Yeah. I wasn't sharp enough to do that. I had been trying to figure out the scheduling and all that stuff.
Right.
So my wife was the guinea pig that I wrote, a fun note on. But yeah,
perfect.
I probably wouldn't recommend that. I mean, you would kind of want to use a fake name, but I'm the honest dude. I tell the truth. If that's probably not the best choice to use a family member's name, but I did. So
no, it works because technically you can't bill her to insurance anyway. So why not?
There you go. So go ahead, email us if you don't like that. And I'll probably email you back and tell you I don't care. All right.
That's funny. We could spend all day talking about documentation. So if you're one of our members, go into the library, review the rules on documentation, how to tell the diagnosis story. If you're not a member yet, become a member. That way you have access to it. Okay. Here's another fear of practice. Okay, you ready? This one needs a drum roll.
Ready.
Fear of staff management. Fear of staff management.
Gosh, I hate that one too. I'm with everybody on that. And it's a tough one, because if you're not a good manager, there are a lot of us that are great doctors, and you're not a good manager. You have to learn how to become a good manager. So some of us stick our heads in the sand. Some of us are lucky enough that they have a family member or a well-trusted office manager that handles most of that for you. And you just kind of see it from 30,000 feet, and you kind of go, let's do this, let's do that. And they do it. I've been in that situation. It's wonderful. I've also been in the situation where I'm hands-on, having to manage staff myself. I'm not a confrontational guy. I'm the happy guy. I don't like confrontation. So for me, it was a real learning experience. And I had to tap into a part of my personality that was a little bit different. So don't be afraid. If you're not good at it, you can become much better at it, but you really have to practice management. It's not easy.
It's not easy. And that's one of the things that we help doctors a lot with. That's staff training and staff development, staff growth, that kind of thing. Number one, you have to understand what staff likes, what makes a good staff person, what makes somebody want to engage in training and really absorb the training and want to engage it to the point where they want to take it to the next level. And a lot of that comes from us as the doctor owner of the clinic, but it's hard because you're spending so much time in patient care, documentation, those kind of things. It's hard to think about, I got to do staff training too. So we developed this fear of, well, I gave them a procedure manual. I taught them how to do it once, and now I expect them to do it. And then we get the call that says, oh, my staff is just terrible. I don't know what to do. Right. Well, what have you done? Well, I haven't done anything. So you get into this crazy cycle with staff that,
and here's the other thing they haven't done. They haven't engaged and used the tools that we've given them. And that's a great thing about CATS Consulting, is that we have the CA Ninja on board with us,
That's
Marissa.
right.
She works with your staff. So you don't have to do all the management. All you have to do is direct them in the right direction. Sometimes docs try to do it all by themselves, and they don't even take advantage of the tools that are in front of them. And so that's the first thing that we're going to tell you is if you're having some disasters with your staff, hey, let's get them on the call. Let's ask those questions. Let's talk about training. Let's do what we need to do to get people trained, because people don't automatically, just innately, know how to be a CA in your practice.
Right.
And you don't have the time to train them yourself. So let us do the work.
That's exactly right. Here's another fear. The fear of new patient acquisition.
Yeah.
This one's frightening to a lot of people. And I get it.
Is.
It's the marketing process. And I'm going to throw out a word, and this is a very dirty word in our profession. It puts you in a position where you feel like you have to. Are you ready? Sell.
Yep.
I hear the screams. I hear the screams out there right now because I said it.
Yeah.
You guys, you have to understand, at least have some basic knowledge of how to acquire new patients. And it's not typically what you think. It's not about how much money you spend on social media. It's not about hiring the social media company to help drive your marketing. It's about you. It's really born out of you. And so we spend a lot of time talking about this because it's so important in where to put your emphasis in your marketing component. And it's surprising where it actually comes from, because your brand reputation is you. It's not how glitzy your marketing is. And the other thing you have to realize is in new patient acquisition, there's a huge difference between a cold lead. So for example, you go do a spinal screening, okay? And you're talking to people that you've never met before. Those are cold leads. Or you do some kind of social media lead magnet kind of thing and try to get names and make phone calls and that kind of thing. Those are cold leads. Mm-hmm. Here's the crazy thing. Your best patients are always going to be the ones that are warm or hot leads. And they are so easy to get, but we spend so much time focused on the 20% of the population that has pain at any given time, instead of the 80% of the population that also needs chiropractic care, but they don't know why. Mm-hmm. So new patient acquisition is actually fairly simple and should be one of the least of your fears in practice.
I agree. And I'll throw one thing in here. This is kind of a little pro tip secret behind that. If your current patients understand chiropractic, they are more adept at referrals because they understand what you do. And it's not just, hey, he helps low back pain, or hey, he helps neck pain. And I had a patient come in. I made that mistake not too long ago with a patient that I thought, because they'd been under chiropractic care their whole life, that they understood everything about chiropractic care. That was my assumption. And it was a poor assumption, because that patient actually found out from another patient that I had adjusted her wrist, and that she felt so much better after I adjusted her wrist. So she comes to me and says, I didn't know that you adjusted wrists. How embarrassing. How embarrassing that I did such a bad job of educating my current patients, because you know what? Now that person happened to tell somebody else that was already a patient of mine. But if my patients were educated, they would know that I adjust extremities. And sometimes I think we take it for granted what our patients know. So I think it helps sometimes do some Facebook Lives, do some short little ditties on what you do. And you think it's redundant because everybody knows. Some people don't know.
Yep. That's exactly right. Here's another fear. The fear of collecting. Again, I can hear the screams out there.
Yeah.
We oftentimes have this fear of collecting, also known as poverty complex. And so whenever I hear an office having poverty complex, I just have one question. Do you know what that patient's finances are? Are you their banker? Are you their accountant? Are you their investment advisor? Your job is not to figure out what they can afford. Our job is to tell patients our recommendations for care, why they need it, and create value for that care. Let patients make up their own mind.
Right.
But if you do those three things and you do them well, patients are going to pay you for what you do, especially if you're getting them great outcomes.
Yeah. A lot of you get caught in a trap, and the trap is this. You get one or two patients come in that really are in a financial hardship and they're struggling to pay for care. And you make a concession for one individual or two individuals, and then you extrapolate that onto the rest of your patients and assume that they can't afford care. Whereas most people are going out and spending more money to go out and eat dinner, which is not, they could have ate at home. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't go out and enjoy ourselves at times, but they could have ate at home for a lot cheaper. They chose to go out and eat dinner. They have expendable income if they feel that it's valuable to use that income. So what you need to do is create value in the services you provide. We all know that we've created some miracles in our practices. It's very valuable, but you cannot get to a point of where a couple of patients that struggled with payment now dictate that everybody needs a lower price because blah, blah, blah. We've heard this so many times, and it's a trap that people get caught in, and they perpetuate it over time, down to a point of where some practice that we see, unfortunately, are struggling to stay alive. They're seeing a lot of patients, but they're not making any money.
Yeah.
And it's
and they
really
don't know
sad. And it bums me out big time, because docs, some of you, if not all of you, are absolute magicians at what you do.
Yep.
And it just makes my heart sad when I see someone that's struggling to make ends meet, but yet they've got so many success stories in their practice. So,
yep. So don't let poverty complex creep into the picture. And right now, with the economy the way it is, it's real easy to let that poverty complex not just creep in, but flood in, because you start getting this fear that patients can't afford care. Show patients the value. Show patients the value of the care. How does it restore their life? How does it get them back to what they want to do? How does it affect not only them, but their loved ones as well? Make those connections and create that value.
And this may be a discussion that you need to also have with your staff sooner than later. I was just
going to say that.
And you guys need to talk about it, because staff follow your lead. And sometimes, doc, sometimes you're the one telling staff, hey, reduce the charge on this, or don't charge them for this therapy today. You know, the problem is we're supposed to be charging for what we do anyway. But when staff take your lead, then they start to also develop that poverty complex. So what I want is somebody up front that's black and white. He did a service. Here's the cost.
Yep.
How would you like to pay today? You know,
I never, ever, ever, ever get into financial conversations with patients. Never. Marissa is always the one that handled that. And she's black and white. It's this, but we've already presented care and the treatment plan recommendations in the form of value to the patient, so they understand that value every time they pay.
Right.
So here's another one, another fear, the fear of compliance rules.
Yeah.
Another big one.
Some of that's a lack of understanding.
Yeah. Or a lack of wanting to just stop for a minute and spend just a little bit of time to learn it, train your staff on it, and create some implementable procedures. You know, things like CARES Act, HIPAA. I know a lot of you think you're doing HIPAA, but are you doing it correctly? Sometimes I see that you aren't. No Surprises Act. You know, how are you doing with Medicare? Are you playing the diagnosis game and changing dates and diagnoses all the time? Or are you discharging patients from acute care in a reasonable time period and moving them over to maintenance and using the ABN correctly? I'm going to take that one step further. Are you a Medicare provider who can use the ABN? I'm going to just let that one sit there, because people are going to have questions about that comment. So I'm going to force you to contact us so we can have a discussion about that. But, you know, compliance rules, you can't just stick your head in the sand and say, well, if I didn't know anything about it, then I'm not liable for it.
Right. Well, and here's the great thing that I love about what we do. You don't have to recreate the wheel or create the wheel yourself. In a lot of cases, if there's a compliance manual to be had, we've already developed it.
Yep.
We've already created that template. We've already looked at what the rules are, what you have to do to be compliant. And then all you have to do is take that manual and then mold it to your practice. So
Correct.
You have a template to work off of. So we offer those things to our clients.
Yep.
I think it's invaluable because in a lot of cases, paralysis sets in when we look at compliance issues. Where do I start? What do I do? And I get that sometimes we try to Google stuff, but is it the right one? Are you sure that the thing that you downloaded, is it actually compliant?
Right.
Does it follow all the rules? And is it current?
Right.
That's a concern as well. When you look at HIPAA's changed over time. Are you using the right format, or do you know? Because if you don't know, you need to talk to somebody and find out if you are, or you need to get really smart and start digging into this stuff like we do.
Are you using the current ABN form? Are you using providing the good faith estimate correctly? I mean, there's actual process to that one, which came out in the second wave of rules interpretation. So, there's a lot out there. And if you're not doing the stuff, that's where the big fear comes in. The fear, don't put the fear on the side of being compliant. Put the fear on the side of not being compliant. And I'll be honest, being compliant, while it sounds like a big ball of wax to crawl over, it's really not. Compliance isn't all that difficult. And docs, here's the good news. You're going to appoint somebody in your practice to be your compliance officer, and you're not going to take care of it. They're going to take care of it for you.
So let me take a step back on that. Let's talk about the practice that has either a doctor by themselves or one staff member. How do they handle that? That's just a real quick question. How do they handle it? Because there's going to be some people listening that go, I operate by myself. How do I do this?
Even if you just have one staff person, it's easy to manage this stuff. It's not difficult. I think we hear compliance and we hear federal rules and all this stuff, and we think, oh my gosh, I got to have a staff of 10 people just to manage that. No, you don't. The stuff is super simple. And if you're by yourself, you still can do it. You just have to plan to do it and do it correctly. It's not, it's really, none of this is really that hard. We've made it simple. We have great training videos. We have all the templates and components to make it successful in your practice. And it's easy to implement.
And most of it doesn't really change a whole lot of what you're doing in your practice. It just pulls you up to a level where you're compliant.
Right. Exactly. Okay, Troy, I'm going to throw out one more fear, and I know you're going to have fun with this one. Okay. Because I know this is one of your favorite topics and you don't find it scary, but we know a lot of people out there do.
Right.
And I want to pick this apart a little bit.
I'm dying to hear it.
Sorry, I've got my list over here on my other screen. Okay, you ready? This is the ghosts and goblins of chiropractic.
Okay.
The fear of having a business advisor or coach.
Oh my, yeah. And I'll tell you why some people are scared of this. We've talked to a lot of clients. I'm going to sit up in my chair for this one. We've talked to a lot of clients.
I'm going to get big and tall.
I'll be honest with you, 9 times out of 10, it's not the fear of the financial obligation. We have great plans that it's a lot different than it was 10 or 15 years ago in consulting. We have tailor-made plans for every client. So it's usually not the price. Here's the big one. Have you ever seen The Wizard of Oz? And they pull back the curtain? Yeah. That is the biggest fear in a lot of cases, is that people feel like if you open the curtain behind my practice and see behind the scenes, you're going to see how much disarray I'm really in, or how I always call it being a fraud. And I say that not in a bad way, because, a lot of times we train to do something and we become good at it. But the first time we encounter it in the wild, in other words, the first time we want to do that Mark Charette foot adjustment that we learned at seminar a couple weeks ago, and you've never done it before, you feel like an absolute fraud doing it. That's what I'm talking. When in reality, you've been well trained and you worked on other docs while you were at seminar and you were doing really well with it, but you got home and you're like, oh no. what if this doesn't work? What if the patient sees right through me that I haven't really done this a whole lot? That's what I'm talking about when I talk about fraud. So when we're looking at your practice as well, sometimes we feel like that we put up a good front, kind of like our Facebook persona, but in reality, we're kind of a hot mess, and I think all of us have a little bit of that going on. So some people are afraid to reveal that, when in reality, it's very freeing. A lot of people, once they do reveal it and we go, oh, well, here's what you need to do. You need to do this, this, and this, and this, download this, watch this video. Yeah. Oh, well, that's it. Yeah. Okay. And then you're going to be compliant, or you're going to be able to, your first day procedures with patients are going to be better. Your report of findings, or your financial report of findings, simple little things sometimes that we're going to help you with.
Right. Right. And I think sometimes too, there's also in there a fear of change. And it's how many things are they going to make me change? Well, number one, we're at KC Consultants, we're not going to make you do anything. We're going to show you better ways to do what you've been doing. We're kind of like, if you remember, do you remember the old BASF commercials? Oh yeah. We don't make such and such product. We just make it better.
Right.
That's who we are. We're not going to give you a practice in a box and say, here, go tear down everything you've done and build what's in this box. No, that's not how we work. So you just mentioned something. Good coaching is not pulling you down. It's not pulling you under. It's not pulling you into quicksand. It's very freeing. And it's helping take some of the monkeys off your back, so to speak. You mentioned the Wizard of Oz, take the flying monkeys off your back and allow yourself the freedom to be successful and have just somebody just kind of keeping you between the navigational buoys along the way so that you are successful. It's easy when you're in patient care all day long to get sidetracked by stuff, or to see this shiny thing and get attracted to going over this way when that's not necessarily what you need to be successful.
I always compare it like this. So we've all seen TV shows where there's some criminal that maybe they've been perpetuating a financial fraud for years and they know it, and it's grinding on them. They know that they're not doing things right, whether it's a small thing in your practice that you need to improve, or whether you're some, Ponzi scheme guy that created a Ponzi scheme. How many times do we hear when they finally got caught, they were relieved they got caught? They were relieved that somebody finally brought it out of the shadows into the open. And sometimes, I'm not saying that you guys are doing horrible things in your practice. It's just no. There might be something in your practice that needs improvement, and in your own mind, you kind of grind on it. It needs improved, but you haven't taken the time to do it. We bring it out in the light and you go, oh man, I'm so relieved. And the solution sometimes is super simple to actually make your practice run more efficiently. Right. And then you got that monkey off your back. That's kind of what we're talking about. We lift you up rather than pull you down.
Yep, absolutely. We just made Halloween fun. Yeah. We just unpacked some of the most common fears in practice and put them aside and shown you that you don't have to have fear about these kind of things. So if you're ready to get your practice on the path to profit, schedule a breakthrough call with us today, or go to KC Consultants, go to KC Consultants and download our PDF on how to boost your annual practice revenue by $130,000 in 5 simple steps. So 2 things to do: download $130,000 in 5 simple steps and set up a breakthrough call. Let's talk about your practice and how we can get you on the path to profit. Troy, thanks for jumping in today. Thanks to everybody out there for listening to the KC CHIROpulse podcast, brought to you by KC Consultants, helping doctors keep their pulse on success. Happy Halloween, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.